It is a pleasure to welcome John and Susan Yates to Peninsula Bible Fellowship. It's a particular pleasure for me because I look to John as a spiritual leader. I sort of have considered him to be a pastor from afar, and I have always wanted to have you be here at Peninsula Bible Fellowship, and now because of the coronavirus, we can make this happen. And so, welcome, John and Susan, to the congregation. And John served faithfully as a rector at the Falls Church in Virginia for 30 years, 40 years of ministry, and just closed 30 years as rector of the Falls Church. Many of those years in the Episcopalian Church, and then since 2006 in the Anglican Church in North America. And I think that your story could easily make a compelling movie. And that's sort of what I want to talk to you about today. So it's just such a pleasure to have you. Welcome to Peninsula Bible Fellowship.
Well, this is the next best thing to being there in person, which I hope will work out eventually, Brent.
I hope so too. You know what it is to sort of walk through tough times. You have had some difficulties in ministry, some really huge challenges, and it strikes me that the Church Universal is going through some challenges these days. And so, would you share with us just a little bit about your story and some of the struggles that you've been through?
Yeah, just jump in, hon. Susan and I have been married almost 51 years.
Congratulations.
We were married in 1969, and it was right about that time when we sensed God was calling us, both of us very specifically, to dedicate ourselves to trying to bring spiritual renewal to the old denomination that we had grown up in. We both came from North Carolina. We grew up in the Episcopal Church, which was awfully dry during those days. And we were nurtured and trained and discipled through Young Life and Campus Crusade and other ministries. But when I was at Princeton Seminary and Susan was working there, putting me through, we felt God was calling us to devote ourselves to trying to bring about renewal in the denomination that we had grown up in. And that was a surprise. But we agreed God was leading us. And so when we finished school in 1971, we went off into ministry in the Episcopal Church. And we served in that denomination for about 35 years. And everywhere we went, we had great blessing, wonderful time. But it was always a battle because decades earlier, generations earlier, the leaders of our denomination had, well, I like to say they had drunk the poison. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is that they had lost their sense of confidence in the trustworthiness of the Bible. They no longer believed in the complete authority of the Word of God. And so when you imbibe that way of thinking, it begins to poison your faith and your system. And that's what happened to the denomination. And gradually, folks like us were more and more sort of pushed off to the side and considered relics of something in the past. We gave 25 years to an old Episcopal church in Falls Church, Virginia, that went all the way back to the 1730s. George Washington was on the vestry of the church. Amazing history around the church. And during the 25 years that we were there, we saw just amazing renewal. It seemed like the hand of God was upon us. And people coming to Christ, ministries developing, people learning what it meant to serve Christ in the marketplace, people going to seminary and the ministry, amazing, growth in numbers. But all the time, the denomination was heading the other direction. And in 2006, our leadership decided that we had to leave the denomination. Our vision changed. We began to feel that what our calling was now was to help develop a new Anglican church in North America that would be Reformed and evangelical, and would be a mixture of what we call the three streams: the Reformed evangelical stream, the charismatic stream, and the higher church, the more liturgical stream, because God was working in all three of those streams. And so we left the denomination 15 years ago. We thought that we could keep our church property, because all the property, which was worth millions and millions of dollars, was in the name of the church. It was in the name of the vestry or the board of our church. Mm-hmm. We were the ones who had paid for the buildings. We'd had wonderful building programs there. But it turned out we were wrong about that. Mm-hmm. The Episcopal Church sued us, and in 2012, we had to leave our property, and we had to leave everything. Yeah. Everything.
We couldn't take a Bible or a hymn book or
the waste baskets, the vestments, the books, the pictures hanging on the wall. Everything had to stay there. And so it was quite a sobering day when I turned over the keys to the security guard who was there to take control of the building.
My gosh.
But we had a sense that we had done what we thought was right, but it hadn't turned out the way we thought it would. And so now we had to find out what God had for us. And so we went through a period of several years, 5, 6, 7 years, of moving from place to place. The whole congregation, except for about 30 people, the whole congregation left. And so we were together, but we didn't have any buildings, didn't have any property, no offices. And, I'd always wanted to be a church planter. And so now I had an opportunity to plant a church. Plus we had a few thousand people to do it with.
That's right.
So finally, after years of praying and moving from school to school, from hotel to hotel, God provided property for us. And a year ago, we finished our building program. We have a huge office building. We use part of it. We rent out part of it. We have a huge parking garage and a beautiful new church, and it's all on one property. We finished that building program a year ago, and that was the time when I stepped aside as being the senior pastor of the church and turned things over to a tremendous young man who we love and who we had discipled, we'd known for a long time, and he's now the senior pastor, or we call it the rector.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's been quite a story.
Where do you find solace when you're turning over the keys, and you have sort of felt like it was the law was on your side and that you had an agreement, and then everything turns to chaos? Where do you find solace? Where do you go, John?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that we had rulings at the local level. We had 2 different sessions with the Virginia Supreme Court, and we came close to going for the United States Supreme Court. So there was a lot of up and down, excitement and discouragement. But I think everybody has hard times in life. Everybody has huge disappointments.
Yeah.
And so we felt that though it was an unusual story, it's just a part of being in this world. And I think I've analyzed what do we do when we go through times like this. And sometimes when you are really sort of at the bottom of things emotionally, I think what you have to do is you have to back up. You have to go back in your heart to the things that the basic things that you're absolutely sure of. Because there come times when you're not sure of a lot and you don't know what's going on. So you have to say, well, what do I know for sure? Well, I know God loves me. I know that He's promised to never leave me. I know that He hears our prayers and He answers them in the way that is best. What are the things I know for sure? And so we review those things, and I think when you do that, it gives you a certain amount of, okay, that's enough for now. I can go with that. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do, yeah.
I would add a couple things to that.
Yeah.
One, Johnny is a real man of the word and a man of prayer. And our whole 50 years of marriage, he's gotten up early every morning to pray for me and the children. We have 5 kids, and now we have 21 grandchildren.
Wow.
And spend time alone with the Lord. And so I think that discipline of seeking God first has really, to me, that's been the model. That's where you go for solace, is you go back to seeking Jesus first and being in the Word. So I think that was really important. And then another thing I think that's really important is you've got to have a few close friends who are with you. And guys need guys and girls need girls.
Yeah.
Guys, you can call and say, okay, this is really hard. I need you to pray for me today. Guys that you can really be vulnerable with, who'll hold you accountable, who'll say, okay, you just need to trust Jesus with this. So friendship is really important.
I sure agree with those things. But let me just try this out on you, see what you think. Any married couple knows that you have times in your marriage when things are not very good. You have times when you don't understand each other, you're disappointed, you're hurt. When you've argued and you don't want to talk to each other, you have hard times. And the first time that ever happened to us, I remember we were just a young married couple and we were really having a hard time with each other. But what was clear to me was God led us to each other. This marriage was not a mistake. This marriage is of God. If He brought us together, He's going to see us through. Yeah. That's what I mean by going back to the basics. You go back to what you're sure of.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes you have to do that in marriage.
Absolutely. You are a man of prayer, and both of you are people of prayer. I have wondered, with all of this crazy COVID world, do you feel like, whew, I got out of this just in time?
It was when we had a huge Sunday morning worship service in a big high school auditorium my last Sunday. I didn't get to lead them into the new church building. I was like Moses on the edge of the promised land. I said, there it is, Sam. In a couple months, you can enter in and it's all yours. But when I knelt down and gave back to God my spiritual authority over that people, my shepherding responsibility, and it was transferred to the shoulders of this young man, it was a huge relief. And I was so grateful for 40 years with those people. And I was so grateful to be able to turn it over to someone else now. And I got up, I left the stage, I went down, I sat next to my wife in the auditorium, and that was it. And we haven't looked back yet. I would say for the first few weeks after stepping aside, I was probably I was exhausted. I was going through some emotional turmoil. Susan said she thought maybe I was a little bit depressed. Maybe I was. I don't know. But I think what I was wondering was, okay, I've always thought that my identity was not being the senior pastor of this church, but I had a larger identity than that. Now we're going to find out. And I have found out that wasn't my identity. My identity as a child of God, an inheritor of the kingdom of heaven, a husband and a father and a grandfather. Yeah. That's my primary identity, and it's been absolutely wonderful. We haven't looked back, either one of us. In fact, we've had more fun the last year than we've had in a long, long time. We decided we will not make. We'll make very few commitments this first year. And so we did some traveling and speaking during the first few months, but then COVID hit and everything was canceled, and we've just been here. We're living now in a little farmhouse out in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, and it's just been great.
You well deserved too, by the way. Well deserved. What do you think, being a person of prayer, being people of prayer, what do you think God's trying to do? Because it's not exactly the same type of exile experience that you went through, but yeah, we're now in the 4th month of, very limited ability to worship together. What do you think? What are the possibilities, and what do you think God's trying to speak to His church through this time?
Well, a lot of people are thinking about that, and a lot of people have different ideas about it. And I think one thing is God is trying to teach us that we are interconnected with the whole world. We're all experiencing this. We're all sort of victims of it. And it's bringing us together in our concern for one another and our sense of how interconnected we are. Something started over in China affecting all of us. And I think I would like to think that all around the world, people are experiencing a universal sense of a need for God. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I've got to think that there are millions and millions of people whose thoughts have turned back to God in this time and who are, wanting a closer relationship to Him. John Piper said something that I think is true. One of the things he said was, whenever we experience a major cataclysmic disaster where so many people are killed, he said, that's a warning of the last judgment. We're seeing a little taste of something that's going to happen at the last judgment, when there will be total final destruction of those who've rebelled against God. So that's a very sobering thought.
Indeed.
But honestly, Brent, I don't know what God is doing through this. I don't believe it's an accident. I think God is allowing it. God is behind it. But we don't yet know what it means. And it reminds me of when we lost our church, and we came together, 1,000 or so of us, that night, and we had it was our last night in the building. And what God showed me a passage in John chapter 13 that has meant the world to me, where Jesus was washing the disciples' feet. And when he comes to Peter, Peter says, "Oh, no, I'm not going to let you do this to me." And I don't know if you remember Jesus' response, but in John 13:7, he said, "You don't understand what I'm doing now, but one day you're going to understand." And that's the way I view this COVID thing. We don't know what God is doing now, but one day, with perspective and time, we will see what it all means.
I think a good question to ask in the middle of this, because this is a personal question I've been asking myself, is what would God say to me in this time? We're living with ambiguity. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen the next day. We make plans, they change. We can't plan. I mean, we can sort of plan, but we can't really plan. Weddings have been canceled, graduations haven't happened. It's a mess. And as I was thinking about this in my own life, I was realizing how much I don't like ambiguity.
Oh, yeah.
I like the plan.
Absolutely.
I like the plan. And so I had to ask myself a deeper question. Okay, Susan, you don't like ambiguity. You're living in ambiguity. what would God be saying to you in the midst of ambiguity? So I think one thing that's important for each of us is to say, okay, God, what would you say to me in this situation that I'm not real happy to be in? But God still wants to speak, and he still wants to do a new work in our lives. And one of the things he has shown me is how much I want to be in control. And that goes right back to sin. Really, I want to tell God how to fix this. And I want to fix everyone else, and I want to fix me. And really, that's me trying to play God. And so I've been just convicted at a deeper level of my own arrogance. And relating to Eve, she wanted what she didn't have. So there's a passage in Jeremiah that I've always loved. It's Jeremiah 33:3, and it says, "Call unto me, and I will show you great and mighty things that you do not know." And I think that applies in this situation. It applies in every situation, but in the midst of something we can't control, it's important to call on the Lord and say, okay, God, I can't control this. So I'm asking you to show me something, reveal to me something new that I don't know, something other. I sort of call it the principle of the other. What is the other thing that God might be trying to teach me? And what that does, Brent, is it gives us a vision in the midst of a hard time, a vision that God is going to speak and God is going to grow us up. And we don't know what it is.
Yeah. Good words. Good words indeed. Well, it's a pleasure to get to spend some time with you. I do hope that we will get you here one day to preach in the pulpit here. We would love to have you. I'm a little bit jealous. I wouldn't mind being in a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains right about now. So thank you so much for your time, and God bless you, John and Susan.
Thanks so much.
Give our love to all your people, Brent.
Yeah.
We'll see you one day.
We will.